you here, and wow, what a 5 days. More than 100 films, 4 venues, fabulous parties, fascinating Q&As and talkbacks, even Hollywood stars. I mean, it doesn't really get better than this. I'd also like to say that the mix of films was so thoughtfully curated, and that's a huge credit to Artistic Director Jay Craven and the talented team of judges who reviewed it. And I'd like to give a hearty thanks to producer Lloyd Commissar and his They worked tirelessly and they nailed it, I think. And I'd also like to say congratulations to all the filmmakers who were part of this really magical event. Your work was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to seeing where you go and what you produce next. I think we all were honored to be a part of this experience and get to see your work. And lastly, I'd also like to say thanks to IBJ Real Estate, who is not only a sponsor of this festival, but has been for many, many years of Town Hall Theater too. So I'll pass the mic to Lloyd, but also I hope to see you back.
Okay, welcome to closing night, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to echo what Lisa said, which is what a 5 days. Seriously, right? I'm stunned. And we're so proud of having been able to present this to all of you, this festival. So I'd like to thank everybody for making this Comeback Festival such a memorable and historic event. From the screening of Storm Lake and the fabulous Art Cullen, to the inaugural AICEF event and our Indonesian filmmaker Havan Agustriansyah on his first trip to the US, and the Indonesian diplomatic delegation, and the Indonesian food, to our journalists and filmmaker panelists from all over Vermont, to the Vermont Symphony Orchestra returning to the festival in stunning fashion, to our superb honorees, Sam Pollard, Heidi Levin, and our wonderful guest tonight, Karen Allen, to our terrific volunteers at all our venues, to our engaged and enthusiastic audiences, and finally, to our amazing filmmakers here tonight, or somewhere else on this big planet. I am in awe of how this all came together in a way that I will never forget and am deeply grateful for. To our incredibly generous presenting sponsor, IBJ Real Estate, my heartfelt and immense thanks for standing with us, Amy, at every turn and helping us offer such a bountiful festival. Thank you so much. And to my fantastic team, Jordan Mitchell, Sophie Hockman, Dan Levesque, where are you, Dan? Dan, over here. And Monroe McLaren, where are you, Monroe? I want to express, and I mean this, no cliche, this is my sincerest gratitude for your tireless and magnificent work. Look what you created. Without you, there is no festival. So thank you so very much. And now I turn the mic over to my visionary colleague, the artistic director of the Middlebury New Filmmakers Festival, Jay Greenman.
Hello. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. There was a certain amount of uncertainty about all of this. A number of festivals, even now, are canceling their live in-person screenings. Even the Sundance Film Festival, looking all the way forward to January, is saying they will do a virtual festival and some kind of live presence. And so when we decided through the spring and talked on a weekly basis about what would be possible, we really weren't sure, but in April or so, we made the commitment to go live. And of course, it was a time of great optimism with the vaccine and all that was possible, especially here in Vermont, which had done such a good job of pulling together in the interest of public health. As this festival grew closer, we also discussed, should we really do a full-blown festival? Or should we do a half of what we normally do? And the decision ultimately, and I credit Lloyd with this, was to go full tilt. And in fact, I think this is the largest number of films we've had.
Yeah.
And to really, this is a process, it's kind of a sculpting process of giving it shape. And as often happens in my experience of trying to put something together, the themes sort of bubble up late in the game. But you start to program films, you start to see different patterns taking place. And for me, the pattern that was, and the themes that we're developing this year were about connectedness and disconnectedness, which seemed appropriate for the moment. And the opening night film, Storm Lake, really was about how our local newspapers are the connective tissue that define and unite and provide communication within our small communities. It seemed profound and important and of this moment, especially with such a vital and important local newspaper here, the Addison Independent, which is one of our sponsors and without whom we could not do this. Tonight's film, The Ants and the Grasshopper, similarly, is about a woman in Malawi, a small village, who sets out to meet, who is a farmer facing the, challenges of climate change and drought, who says, I wish I could go to America and meet farmers there and share my thoughts and hear what they have to say. Seeking vital, life-saving connectedness. Again, emphasizing also the larger themes that compel us in this moment. And throughout the festival, I've seen it again and again. Even the film Chinese Box, which we showed with Heidi Lovin, which is really about disconnectedness, as the change in Hong Kong was happening, which of course is continuing to reverberate now. And the need for connectedness, the need for a sense of the common good, a sense of what brings us together, what unites us, what makes it possible. And I think the only reason I mention this is because when we decided to go with the festival, and as recently as 2 weeks ago, there was a looming question. Will we have an audience? We did not know. Will people respond to this call to again experience moments of shared community, connected? And I'm amazed. This has been a wonderful experience, a day longer actually than our previous festivals. And immediately the sense that I associate with this festival of a community coming together and connecting took over. There was no festival until you showed up, acting on a basis of faith, curiosity, an openness to discovery, and a faith in each other and in what we've put together, and I just want to thank you for that. We had a festival, it's a memorable event. So, that's basically what I had to say, but...
Let me set up something for the filmmakers so they have a protocol.
I wish you would.
Okay.
I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be great.
There they are. And once we're done, not Sophie and Jordan. It's Edmonds from our friends at Vermont-Made. These beautiful, beautiful. Some have said The Oscars don't hold a candle. Anyway, what we're going to do now is, of course, hand out the teddies. And so when a filmmaker's name comes up on the screen, I would hope that you come forward and come up this way, accept the teddy. If you'd like to make a few remarks at the standing mic, that's fine. If you don't, that's okay too. And then when you leave the stage, please come back this way, because otherwise you're going to fall on Doug Anderson over here, and it's going to be tragic. Okay, Jay's going to do the first 4 awards.
Yes, where was I? Okay, our first award is for Best Documentary Short. And the winner is Tanaga Koro, A Culinary Portrait. Who saw this film? Anybody in the room see the film? Yeah, it's a terrific movie. Directors Victoria Fisses and Masashi Nozaki. And the festival will accept their award on behalf of them. They are not here tonight. Best Documentary Feature, Alaskan Nets. Yeah.
I went to Middlebury, so it's really special to be back, kind of where the dream started. So thank you to this community, whether you're part of the school or just the town. It's really fun to be back home, where, like I said, the dream started. I'm gonna cry, so bear with me. To all the filmmakers in the room, congratulations to all of you. This has been a really tough time with COVID, and as my agent said, you picked the worst time in cinematic history to finish your project, so congratulations. But either way, it's a hard business, so props to you guys for fighting a good fight and stay with it, keep at it. My wife right there, couldn't have done this without her, so if everyone could join me in giving her a huge round of applause. And to all the families of all the filmmakers, you guys are saints, thank you so much for letting us do what we do. Thank you.
Best Narrative Short, The Other Side, director Josh Leong, producer Sophia Barra, who will accept the teddy.
Oh man. Hello everybody. First and foremost, thank you guys so much for having us here. Honestly, it's, our short has come a long way. This was completed back in March when the pandemic started, so it's quite the honor to fully be here in person for the first time ever, both as a now former student. We're very, very grateful to have this. On behalf of the director, Josh Leong, who unfortunately was not able to be here today, we're very proud of this and very, very honored to be part of this festival. Thank you all so much.
Best Narrative Feature, Poser, directors Ori Segev and Noah Dixon, producer Drew Johnson, who will accept the teddy.
Drew!
Y'all are nice. Thank you. Big shout out to Middlebury for having us. This is everyone who worked on this feature. It was their first feature, and that was something really special. And they're some of my best friends. And if you've ever worked on a film, the fact that they're still some of my best friends is pretty awesome too. And yeah, just thanks so much. If you didn't get a chance to see the film, we actually just finalized distribution, and it should be out streaming this fall. So, thank you.
Okay, we're going to turn to the Hernandez Bayless Prize for the feature film that best captures the triumph of the human spirit. And that will go tonight to Forget Me Not, the director Olivier Bernier and the producer Tiffany Conklin, who will accept the Teddy. Could we please have the Hernandez Bayless family come to the stage for a couple of remarks? Thank you. Tiffany, come on up too.
Oh yeah, it's so hard to unmask. I'll do it for a minute and put it back on. So grateful, by the way. Thanks, Liv, for requiring fascination. What a genius idea. This has been the best film festival ever. I think that was a really good idea to gather everyone right with our Vermont ethos. Our whole family's here except for our son, who's babysitting the puppy that we have now at home, so he's the missing person. Just wanted to say a few things about the movie. From the haunting opening images of 20th century Letchworth in Rockland County, Forget Me Not tracks how our society mistreats disabled children to this day. At Letchworth, the institute, the kids were doomed to an endless life of misery and filth, where they were left almost completely on their own, neglected, and in subhuman conditions. Today, while Letchworth and similar institutions may have been shut down, many disabled students are exiled to a completely segregated educational environment. Olivier and his wife Hilda traced the arc from pregnancy to birth of their first child, Emilio, a lovely little boy with an infectious smile and a great personality. In Hilda's words, he didn't look like a baby with Down syndrome. He just looked like my child. Hilda was a high school special ed teacher, yet she couldn't navigate the New York City public school system to get Emilio into an integrated classroom. Hilda and Olivier are the living embodiment of triumph of the human spirit as they fight for inclusive education so Emilio is not segregated. Despite their patience and full-time dedication, they face organized resistance and discrimination. It was painful to watch administrators ignore Emilio's humanity and treat him like a problem with no viable solution. For another child, Wesley, the school board was going to bus him an hour out of his West Hampton public school, which would in effect have cut him off from his own community entirely. In the culminating scene in the movie, and I hope some of you are getting a chance to see it, Emilio's teacher recommends to the Board of Education that he does in fact belong in a fully integrated classroom. That recommendation flummoxes the Department of Ed rep, who forgets to mute her mic on Zoom and calls a board member off screen because she can't figure out how to deny him. Yet she does so anyway with no reason and against all logic, breaking their hearts. Thanks to Forget Me Not, families struggling to integrate their own children finally have an example to follow. The fight for Emilio goes on long after the final credits roll, and thanks to Forget Me Not, we can all join their fight to make our schools more inclusive. The triumph of the human spirit in this heart-rending documentary transcends Hilda and Olivier to all who fight for equality.
Thank you.
So this is my mistake. If we could just advance the slides to the Hernandez Bayless Prize. One more. There we go. Forget Me Not.
Thank you. And thank you so much for, is this on? Okay. Thank you so much for creating this award and for all of the work that you're doing as well. This is an incredibly important change that we're all trying to create. I think that all the filmmakers here are trying to create some kind of change that's necessary. It's been an amazing festival. It's been such an incredible community that's so engaged, and I just feel so honored on behalf of Olivier, the director, and the Rose Six family. Olivier couldn't be here because he's about to have another child any day. But thank you so much for everything. This has been incredible.
Okay, Mary, if you could skip back to audience awards short really fast so nobody sees anything. Thank you. Did anybody do that very subliminal? Well, that's what you call recovering from a senior moment right there. All right, the audience award for short, after all the ballots were tallied, is going to go to the Cho Story. Okay. The director of the show stories, Anna Sankar.
Thank you so much. I just want to express my gratitude to everyone who works for the Middlebury Film Festival and the whole community here. We've been here before, and every time we come back, it's I'm really touched by the love of filmmakers and the films, and it feels like coming home for us, so I really appreciate that. And to all the filmmakers who persevered the last year and a half, congratulations to all of you. And this is a project that took almost 3 years for 3 short films. So it's a great honor to share it with you guys as a world premiere. And I just want to thank my friends and family and the whole casting crew. Thanks.
Now we can move to the audience award for future. The award tonight, again, all decided at the last minute, goes to Cirque De Cambodia, directed by Joel Berger.
Thank you, Middlebury. Thank you, Vermont. This is so incredible. Oh my goodness. Thank you all. This is the first time it's been shown on the big screen. It's the first time it's been seen in front of a live audience. And unfortunately, it's been a tough road. There's been a lot of rejection for this film. I thought when I made it, it was gonna, win Sundance or get to Cannes or something like that. But I will definitely settle for this Vermont Teddy Bear. I'm not going to stay up here too long, but the staff is just so incredible. And yes, it feels like home. And just to, I'm sure he probably doesn't want to be embarrassed like this, but Lloyd's taking me to the airport tomorrow at 6 a.m. Who does that? That's what I like. Who does that? Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. This means you all did it. Thank you so much. And I'm sure Sopa and Dina, they're going to be thrilled. Far is going to be thrilled. If anyone out there, really was touched by Far, also, I have nothing to do with this, but if you ever feel like donating something to Far, there's something called give to, like the number 2, asia.org, and because they definitely could use the help. It has nothing to do with me, but if you were touched by Far and what they do, that's a good way to reach out and connect with them. So thank you so much.
My agreeing to take Joel to the airport was another senior moment. We can just go, yes, that's fine, we'll stop right here. The Clio, this is a very special prize to us, the Clio Visualizing History Prize for the Advancement of Women in Film. The award was made a few days ago to End of the Line, the women of Standing Rock. The director, Shannon Craven, was at the festival and did a beautiful Q&A for her film, which was widely attended, and had to leave early because she's working on a very interesting project at the moment. So we gave the Teddy to Shannon earlier, but I'd like to read a statement from Ms. Lola Van Wagenen, the funder and founder of this beautiful prize. Quote, "With our gratitude and respect, Clio Visualizing History is pleased that its annual prize goes to Shannon Craven for her remarkable film, End of the Line, The Women of Standing Rock. The film's powerful story documents the poignant role a group of indigenous women played in protecting their people, their sacred lands, and environment during the construction of the Dakota Pipeline. The encampment they created became a gathering place for their protest movement that captured public attention in the United States and around the world. Like all good history, the film provides fascinating background stories, both personal and political, that reshape our understanding of indigenous women's activism, both in the US and globally. Crane's deft hand balances the simple beauty of the land with a complex story, which gives the film an emotional and intellectual foundation that leaves the audience with both empathy and anger. The film underscores the fact that our indigenous peoples are not museum objects, but vital actors creating social change in America. We'd like to move now to the Gaia Prize for Environmental Filmmaking, and this will go to The Ants and the Grasshopper, our closing night film, and director Raj Patel is here to accept the award.
Goodness. Hello. I'm incredibly grateful. I'm incredibly grateful to you, Lloyd, to all of the labour that goes into a festival like this. But the labour in this film really was that of Anita Chataya and the comrades at the Soils, Food and Healthy Communities Initiative in Malawi. And their gift to me and to this film was to help us see uncomfortably what we are, but even perhaps more uncomfortably how beautiful we might be. And that's a great gift, and I'm tremendously grateful to them. So this award is for the Soils, Food and Healthy Communities Initiative in Malawi. Thank you so much.
I'll take a moment to put a plug in for our closing night film, The Ants and the Grasshopper, and after which Jade will conduct a Q&A with Raj, which I know will be fascinating. So please stay for the film tonight. Let us now go to the Shouldice Family Prize for Best Vermont-Made Film. The film is Just Being Here, and the director, our friend Matteo Moretti. As Matteo comes to the stage, I'd like to have Heather Shouldice come up and say a few words on behalf of the family. Heather.
I took the Amy Ryan preparation, thank you, for the tip. If you didn't see this movie, Walter's everyday deep struggles with his mental health, the balancing act of Walter's enduring of his daily walks around his home, never more than a half a mile, and the connection for love of the beavers. It was intimately captured in this documentary. This connection pulls you into Walter's story, his daily routine of sitting by the pond, feeding apples to the beavers, the way the filmmaker captures the passionate relationship as well as nature around him. It is very clear that the beavers need Walter just as much as Walter needs them. Walter notes each day that he sees the same view, but sees something different each day. This really resonated with us as we're lucky enough to live in Vermont. As sponsors of this award, we had the privilege of seeing the category in advance. And my only complaint is, it was only 13 minutes. The movie was too short. We were left hanging, wondering, did the beavers return to Walter? How did Walter ensure the beavers would have enough food to survive if they did return? Was Walter able to continue his fight with mental health without the beavers? Would it just be too much solitude for him in the end? This was really what I think is the filmmaker's success. I watched the movie 4 times, and each time it got better and better. The Shouldice family doesn't always agree, and maybe rarely, but this year the selection process was difficult. We had a lot of back and forth, and as we considered the submissions, for me, this really speaks to the attraction of this film's fest and the films that it brings. It was a tough choice. But on behalf of my family, I just want to congratulate director-producer Matteo Moretti for just being here, and I will see you the 5th time.
So this is my first film festival, and this energy is like absolutely electric. I got in here from Colorado yesterday and immediately like felt so much support. So Thank you all for organizing this. Thank you all for being here. I quickly want to say, I just graduated from Middlebury this May, and clearly I can't get away from it because I'm back here again. But just a note about this film being made in Vermont, I think if you watch it, which I hope you do at some point, it offers a certain kind of presence and stillness that you can really only get being here in Vermont. And attending Middlebury over the last 4 years really informed who I am as a filmmaker. So as much as I and Walter made this, Middlebury also really made this festival. So thank you guys so much and really appreciate it.
We're going to move now to the Vermont Symphony Orchestra Award for the best integration of music into film, and the winner of that award is Mate. We'll bring that up. And our director, producer, director, everything man, Rusty Eagle.
Thanks, guys. I just thank the VSO jury and just this whole concept of coming up with this award is just so cool. I got to see what they did this year with the previous winner, and I'm pretty excited for next year. I'll probably annoy the hell out of them with emails like, can I hear just a little bit, please? But thanks to the whole team here. It's been so great and cool. The festival was just flawless. I think the town and the people here too are just so warm and welcoming. I came in from Philly, so I had to sort of adjust. I have this assumption that people have an attitude problem around me, so like the first in the morning here, I'm passing someone on the sidewalk and they're like, good morning, and I'm like, what is your problem? So now I'm going to go home and be like, hi, good morning, did you see my text? Shut the fuck up! All right, guys, have a good night.
We're looking forward to having Rusty next year back when the Vermont Symphony Orchestra does their arrangement of his incredible score for me. And finally, for me, before Jay takes it and brings it on home, we're going to go to the AICEF Prize for cross-cultural filmmaking, and the award goes to Nomad Meets the City and the director,
Thanks, everybody. I don't think I need to explain, how many people made this film happen, so I just want to dedicate this to the team and also to the family, the wonderful family in our film, and thank you so much.
Last year we initiated a new prize that we call the Thaddeus Stevens Prize for Social Engagement. And people probably know that Thaddeus Stevens, who was the most notorious, one might say, radical abolitionist in Congress, the voice that would not let Abraham Lincoln sleep without consideration of the abolition of slavery, who was portrayed by Tommy Lee Jones in the movie Lincoln. But Thaddeus Stevens was born in Danville and lived in Peacham, where he taught at Peacham Academy. Suffered disability, moved to Pennsylvania, became a congressman there. Was an unrelenting voice, as I say. And interestingly, when he died, he was the first congressman, the first public official ever to lay in state in the Capitol building. The first congressman ever to lay in state in the Capitol building. He insisted on a black honor guard, which was unheard of at the time, and was so treated, and was buried in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, with 40,000 African Americans in attendance. He was truly a larger-than-life figure, and he is a Vermonter. So this year's prize goes to the film, appropriately, How the Monuments Came Down.
Thank you so much to this festival and this community. I have to say that we've been reflecting that we were here 4 years ago with a short that we brought, and it was a remarkable experience. Telling Lloyd on a drive to the airport that this community, the staff, everyone had welcomed us in such a way that it was just an entirely unique experience, and that the only bittersweet feelings we had was that, being that this is first time filmmakers, we could never return. And he said, well, come back when you've made your first feature. And that felt like such a distant dream, or if even a possibility at that time. So to be back here 4 years later and to be honored in this way is a true delight. So thank you.
State how welcoming and special and unique this festival is, and we're delighted to be back. We'll have to keep wrangling ways to come back again. And this award in particular means a lot to us, and as we continue to work at the intersection of history and social justice, we'll try to honor Thaddeus Stevens and his life and legacy. So thank you all.
I'll actually add that the Thaddeus Stevens Award is donated to the festival from Kingdom County Productions. This year we established an additional award, also honoring a longtime Vermonter, Ralph Steiner, who was an artist, a photographer, a cinematographer who influenced, among other people, Walker Evans. Made some of the very important early first experimental films that were distributed in the United States, and really aimed in this award at capturing a sense of poetic cinema, widely described and defined, but in this case really going to the film Me to Play, director Jim Burnfield, and which captures two actors suffering from Parkinson's who joined together to do a fabulous production of Samuel Beckett's Endgame. And the poetry of performance, the writing, everything about it really captures an ephemeral essence of what performance is all about. So please.
Someone says in this movie that Beckett and I guess life is about overcoming and not succumbing. And I think for every filmmaker knows that experience. And certainly Film Festival coming back from a year off certainly does too. I want to thank everyone who was involved in this for persevering. I also want to thank my wife very much for persevering with me, because I certainly couldn't do it without her. And everyone here who's been a part of making a movie knows exactly what I mean about that. So thank you so much. Thank you to this festival. Thanks to Lloyd. Thanks to everyone here. And thank you, Vermont. This is a great audience, a great place, and a terrific festival.
Each year we are blessed with 1, 2, 3 special guests who bring who share with us their sense of craft and vision, their experience in the film industry. They serve as mentors really to our younger filmmakers. The first honoree this year for sustained vision, courage, and excellence in filmmaking. Sam Pollard, who was with us earlier, showed 4 Little Girls and MLK FBI. Was a fabulous guest, held forth, and really provided a lot of illumination and really inspiration for his work. And Sam is back in New York, and we are sending his Teddy to him. The honoree for sustained excellence and imagination in casting, again, Heidi Levitt, who was here, very generous with her time, talking about her. and especially our special guest who has graced us here for the last 2 days and shared intimate details of working on the front lines of Hollywood and in the fabulous films Raiders of the Lost Ark and Starman, Karen Allen. Please welcome her.
So what a pleasure it has been to be here for just, what seems like way, way too short a period of time. My only regret is that just sitting here and listening to these films being described, I wanted to have seen every single one of them. I had the privilege of seeing 2 really wonderful films this afternoon, which is my first opportunity to see anything, and felt so deeply inspired by The Other Side and Cirque De Cambodia. Just blew my mind. But I wish I could have seen more. I should have come earlier. I don't know, next year. But it's been such a delight to be here. I have so enjoyed the audiences that came to the films, to Raiders and to Starman, have been so warm and welcoming, and I very, very much enjoyed their questions and being a part of this festival, and I really, really do hope I will be back, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that was fun, wasn't it? So we're going to take, first I want to thank one more time all our brilliant winners and honorees. A stirring round of applause for them all, please. So we're going to take a 15-minute break. Be back for our screening of our closing night film, The Ants and the Grasshopper. Please join us for the screening and the Q&A with director Raj Patel following the film. The bar is open. Doug wants you to come there and get a drink. No? No, don't come over?
Are we going to do this?
We're going to do it.
We may need to do it without my mic on. Thank you.
Well, congratulations on a powerful and urgent film.
Thank you, and thank you all for staying. I know there have been, you've had a lot of choices of films to watch over the past few days, and you've been filmed out, and I'm very grateful that you stuck it all the way through to the end. So thanks.
I think Bill McKibben in his introduction used a word that I think also appeared in the film, and the word is solidarity. And the need to extend ourselves, I was talking earlier about connectedness, but to extend ourselves to make meaningful connections with this example of people engaged in process and dialogue, and people other than ourselves. Janelle Bowie in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago had a piece that made exactly that point in relationship to COVID in particular, that the idea that market economy sorts itself out and solves all problems, which has sort of been a prevailing ideology since particularly the era of Reagan in the 1980s, needs to be rethought in terms of the urgent need for solidarity. And that climate change is pressing, but public health is reminding us of the same message. We can make a film about how in Africa and Asia, COVID is spreading without vaccines and similar kinds of things. So, and I think the other message that comes across to me very strongly is just the need to listen. And there was a moment where Anita, I felt, particularly in the Midwest, felt sort of overwhelmed to the point where her voice was less. I mean, Esther kept pushing pretty much everywhere. But then Anita came back around when we went to California, to Detroit, and to Maryland, where I think she felt animated and able to connect. And so that's, I guess, the question is, I think you pose the question. That's what good films do. They don't answer the question. They pose the question. And I'm just thinking, in terms of setting out to make a film, how did you see, what did you want to accomplish?
Goodness. Well, I mean, certainly that idea of solidarity is fairly central, but I appeared through the sort of first decade of the century in other people's films as a talking head, and you know how those films went. It was, here's a frontline community suffering, here's a family of people of colour who are going through the mangle of diabetes and suffering of some kind. They're suffering, it's bad. And then there'll be a talking head, it'll be like Jeffrey Sachs or Vanda Nashiva or me or someone, and then the suffering people will suffer a little bit more, and then there'll be some jangly guitar music, and someone will tell you, no, all you have to do is buy organic at Walmart, or as long as your tofu is artisanally made, everything's going to be fine. That sort of arc of understanding communities, frontline communities, working class communities, communities of people of colour, communities in the global south, was the representation of comrades like that was utterly shit. And so I saw that I was part of the problem in being a talking head in these things. And so but the vision of the film was to have frontline communities and the intelligence of frontline communities be showcased front and center. And I didn't know how to do any of this, but I was lucky enough to work with Steve James, who did Hoop Dreams. He shot we were in Malawi in 2011 when we started this film, and he shot some of the original scenes there, some of the very powerful scenes with Anita and Esther, and with Winston. And the vision there was to to have frontline communities do the storytelling. And in the arc of this film, I gradually came to realize that, again, the documentary filmmaking process was part of the problem. That we were a bunch of well-meaning middle-class people from the global north going in and saying, well, you guys are amazing, we're here to tell your story. And in fact, Anita had her own story to tell and her own way of telling it, and that's why she ended up narrating the film. She ended up making the decision to come to America, and she ended up making a lot of choices about what it is that ended up being in the voiceover. So the idea was, yes, we were there on a mission of solidarity, and part of the journey of the film was to recognize that solidarity was about giving up power and about recognizing our own power, but then not just like, not merely listening, but doing something about it. I mean, I think that's the challenge of solidarity. It's all very well for us here in the global north to nod our heads and go, yes, very bad climate change, we should probably do something about that. But when we recognize how complicit we are, that's when it starts getting prickly and uncomfortable. And that's what, ideally this film is part of the movements that are creating that change, where solidarity is not just waving a flag or planting a sign in your lawn, but doing a little bit more than that.
And I think that's, the challenge that people feel, to a certain extent, that the decision-making process is so far outside of their control, and with deep divisions, it seems increasingly hard to find consensus. And so, people are acting. People are converting to solar power, people are driving electric cars, but the question is, truly, if you were to imagine where we need to be in 3 years. Is it a question? What would move people to a meaningful solidarity, an effective solidarity, which would start bringing people into the same dialogue and connecting and actually forging the immediate change that's needed, because as our friend Bill McKibben reminds us, I mean, you know, time is running out, and
well, it's funny you should ask, Jay, because I've got a plan right here. I mean, at some level, that's an impossible question, and because what Anita was showing is that we're not ready to listen, and the US government did a really good job of not listening. But it wasn't just the US government under, you know, under the former president. The US government under this one would do exactly the same thing if we were to redo this film. The Biden administration wouldn't dignify a woman from Malawi coming in to say, what are y'all up to? And the Gates Foundation didn't. We went to them. We went to a range of organizations, you know, philanthropic, private sector, and governmental. And we're very good at not listening. It's an institutional habit that comes from from comfort, because who wants to recognize how, you know, does it give me any joy to recognize how patriarchal I am? No. But do I have to do it? Of course I do. You know, hands up who wants me to be more sexist. I mean, we the same way, you know, do I want y'all to be more white supremacists? No. Less, please. But that process of naming it and pointing it out and then calling ourselves collectively on our shit is difficult. And that's why it's so hard to hear Anita. And so to get to your question of what do we need to do to be able to relate to one another? I mean, I certainly think the listening is part of it. But also, Anita found solidarity in the US. Frontline communities are not, are already taking action. So it's not a case of, well, you know, should we do a little bit more? It's, you know, the Black Panther idea of survival pending revolution is not just a sort of slogan. It's not a bumper sticker. It's what folk in D-Town Farm or a Black Dirt Farm Collective or the People's Kitchen Collective are already doing. And I think that's also important to remember and hold here, that there are frontline communities, working class communities, communities of people of color that are doing the work.
And your film brings attention to that. I mean, I think, you know, there's been growing awareness of the fact that the black farming community was so decimated during the 20th century, you know, started in sort of the 20th century with some real strength and momentum, and was sort of wiped out through sort of neglect and denial and discrimination on lending and just practices that have reduced that community to a fraction of what it was. So it's really encouraging to see these dynamic, you know, black farms that are operating. And it seems to me that, yes, there's also new attention and possibility everywhere, including Vermont, truly, to support that movement. And in fact, there is, and I'm not sure if somebody in the audience may know, there actually is a movement afoot in Vermont right now to acquire land and make it available to people of color to be developing agricultural practices. Does anybody know what that is? There's a Vermont campaign for this, and it's happening, and it's having some success. But, you know, again, there's so much to do. You know, I'm reminded for a second about the film Hunger in America, which you probably know about. Peter Davies was a producer on it for PBS, for public television back, no, it actually was network television, CBS, back in about 68, which really, the film had it was stunning. And it had the impact of creating, really frankly, a sense of shame around the fact that poverty and hunger were pervasive, to the point that there actually was a response over a relatively short period of time, to the extent that within the next 5 years, hunger was essentially eliminated as it was understood at that time. And in some ways, there was an advantage that it could be CBS prime time hitting hard. Because the question is that we need a national conversation where people can then act. And the danger with so much segmentation in the public and in the media market, so-called, when it comes to a film, you know, if this film could be shown in prime time, you know, people would pause and think. And now it's hard to find that time to pause and think. even among people that are aware of the issues of how, of how to pull together and start to act meaningfully.
I mean, but Jay, I mean, the market for a Tumbuka language film in which an African woman comes over to America and calls us on our shit is small. And I'm so grateful that you are here today. Yes. But I mean, and I'm honoured that this space can hold that film. And I'm honoured that you think that there might be a broader audience for it. And part of the way that we want to make this film matter is, look, your example is the perfect one, right? The Hunger in America worked because why? It was screened on national television at the same time as the US was at war in Vietnam against communists who wanted to feed people. And having communists and the language, and having the Soviet Union then be able to say, you America, you say that the free market's fantastic, look at all the elderly people you're leaving by the wayside, whereas we, at least in the Soviet Union, have a decent pension system, which they did. And all of a sudden that public shame was possible because there was some sort of aspiration that Americans had about themselves, and then someone else saying, calling Americans on our shit. Where's that place now? That place is church. And so a lot of, I'm the most godless person I know, and yet I ended up making a film about a prophet. And she speaks in the language of prophets, and so it turns out that this film is having a life in churches in a way where that, the shame that you're talking about and the aspiration, the recognition that we can and should do better still matters. Because it doesn't matter in the public sphere these days, because we don't have communists to hold us to that higher ground. There we go. But I still think that there is the possibility that we might find our higher selves, and that's what I meant earlier on when Anita reminds us uncomfortably about how beautiful we can be. But it is an uncomfortable conversation.
I mean, we are planning, the Middlebury Filmmakers Festival wants to tour this film in February to like 7 or 8 Vermont towns. And the idea of connecting with churches is a good idea. And I think we should also connect to this movement that I'm talking about that is looking to help farmers of color in the state of Vermont establish farms. Because farming is also going through a whole crisis in Vermont. Dairy farming is basically vanishing in front of our eyes. I live in a town where 2 farms that have been in the same family, since 1778 have collapsed in the last 3 months. And that's the end of farming in the 2 towns that are right there. But there is a young energy coming forward that wants to do vegetable farming. Dairy farming has its own problems and it requires $160,000 tractors. And in fact, that's another lesson from this film, is that simple farming, that vegetable farming, that organic farming, is sustainable and can be done on a small scale, and that's a lot of what this is about. But so for our part, I don't know, but I mean, we want to do that. Because I think that listening, people won't listen unless they see the film to listen. But I think that clearly is the lesson that you described. I mean, let's listen to Anita. We don't need more talking heads who have been on MSNBC and everywhere else, but something that reaches us at different points that requires us all to invest and let go of ourselves a little bit, because some of what's in the film is uncomfortable. And to the extent that we can learn from that, and going back to the hunger, that people actually felt shamed. And I think that there's something useful in all that, but I think that it's also difficult.
It's good, I mean, but that's, I mean, look, Anita's life is nothing but difficult.
Sure.
And yet there is triumph, there is adversity and there is triumph. And now, as this new hurricane bears down on us, and there's another one in, sort of fermenting in the Atlantic, and we find ourselves in a world where there are other people who can hunker down and pretend that none of this is happening, and then folk who are in the front lines who are struggling and developing these new kinds of networks of care. That does involve the land back, and there's some hard years ahead. But getting ready for that's probably the right thing to do, rather than pretending that we can go back to normal. That's never going to happen.
And we see Winston.
Yeah.
There's the hopeful sign, absolutely, and within a community setting, and freely admitting this guy who's not going to let you know.
Yeah, that was one of the, we had so many titles for this film. One was Anita Does All These Things. Another was Men Apologize for Shit. And yeah, no, I mean, yeah, and Winston and also Jordan's apologies were, I mean, I think that they're...
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Really touching and meaningful. And, you know, showing that this interaction got things rolling for him, got him thinking.
Because change begins with denial.
And I think that's even, I think it's true that each of the families that seemed not to respond, there was a hint in each case.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I still think it's possible. Have you all seen White Lotus by any chance?
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, those you haven't seen it, I'm not giving anything away, but it involves horrible, rich white people. And in the end, some of them don't change. And the reason they don't change is because it's easier to be comfortable than to change. And that's the quandary we all find ourselves in. And there is, you know, I'm not convinced that all the families that were confronted with Anita found that confrontation sufficient to make them do the right thing. Because we all know what the right thing to do is, and yet it's uncomfortable just to be who we are. You know, I mean, I can stroke my velvet here and I could just sort of lull myself to sleep. And there is no moral high ground for me. But I'm just saying, like, for all of us, there is a level of comfort that we have that maybe we shouldn't. And that's Anita's challenge here. That it's hard to let go of what it is that's comfortable, that we might have to lose a Subaru. That is the official car of Vermont, I'm told. But you know, that we might have to feel it fairly personally. And that's not comfortable, and that's the right thing to do. So we have a choice. We do the right thing, or we do, you know, or we stick with comfort. And that's, you know, that's why I enjoyed White Lotus, because and that's what Anita's doing, is just pointing out to us that we're all those bad guys in White Lotus.
Excellent. Before I want to open it to some questions from the audience, but tell me what you feel the life of the film will be. What is the plan for getting it out there?
Well, you know, obviously, you know, Cannes, and then the film is, we spent 10 years making this, and it was not going to be the kind of film that was going to be the prime time viewing. It's a film that needs accompanying. It's a film that needs someone to hold the space afterwards for us to have this conversation. And again, you know, so we've got visions for unions and for cooperatives and for schools and for universities and for churches. And I suspect we'll end up having many more people seeing it that way than if it were just on PBS and someone could click over.
One of the strengths of the film is its simplicity. It flows freely, easily. It does not get bogged down. You know, it continues to have energy and a rhythm and a pace to it. But and again, it's not complex talking heads. It's even to the extent that we see, you know, Anita and Esther as a presence against which there are responses and reactions and interactions. But they carry us through very nicely, and there's a simplicity to it that I think really makes it quite appealing and accessible. And I think schools, for example, can totally respond to it. It's not dense and you know, didactic in the way that sometimes feels.
Well, you know, it's funny. As a first-time filmmaker, I wanted this film to be twice as long, and you know, with all the glorious bits that we left on the cutting room floor. But luckily, I got to work with grown-up editors who were like, no, you can use that for the educational material. And so we had, you know, 300-400 hours of footage, because it's 10 years, and we spent a lot of time with the camera on. And in the end, it's 74 minutes, and that's, you know, I was lucky to be a first-time filmmaker in the presence of many grown-ups.
It's a good
I'm so grateful for that. So
yeah. Questions that we have in the audience? Young woman right there, yes, with your hand up. Yes, that's you.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Congratulations on a beautiful film. With all your many accolades before, there's a comment that I want to share and also a question.
Many years ago, in dialogue with a fellow filmmaker, we were talking as children of the 70s, and the conversation came up about our generation being the one that embraces film as our religion and our joy to tell stories. And the story that you told is so important to not only humanity, but right now to all of our children. And I think that it's imperative to understand that in documentaries, exactly what you said was that you let the people unfold your film. And that is a seamless film. It is a beautiful film. It is an important film. And that was because you allowed those stories and those voices to run through that film. And I'm just so grateful to hear a filmmaker say that instead of, I'm sure you had a vision, but that you also put the hat to the side and you watched it uncover itself and lure itself into the magnificence that it is. And I'm curious to know what that seed, that next seed is, that drive. What is the next story that you want to share?
I have goosebumps. Thank you so much for just that's a beautiful. Thank you. What we were trying to do here was, we realized at the end, decolonize filmmaking, right? Where if the idea of colonizing is to come in with a language and a vision and and to impose order where you assume there is none, then to decolonize is to get the bloody hell out of the way and say sorry and engage in reparation. And this film didn't do that so well because we only realized, really towards the last couple of years, the second half of our decade of filming, that Anita was and should always have been in the driving seat. So what we ended up doing was fundraising for storytelling to happen in Detroit. You saw Malik Yakini talking about how the Detroit police were preparing for people to rebel. What we ended up doing was raising a ton of money for them to tell their own story, and then funded Detroit filmmakers to do the storytelling. And then that short is going to come out later on this year, and hopefully we'll be able to screen it alongside. But I mean, I think that the sort of ultimate bit of class suicide that I'm able to do here is to just fundraise and not even be associated with it. And I think that's actually here's the big takeaway for other filmmakers, which is, sometimes I see this in the academic world where academics come in and are parasites on working class communities because they get to, this gets to be your site of storytelling, and you get to investigate in one way or another and take the data out and run away with it and make your name and write your paper. What we did as part of this Detroit project was work with the community to develop frameworks for storytelling so that communities can own their own stories. And the joy of that is that wherever communities find themselves, being sniffed around by acquisitive documentary makers who are not from there, what they can do is form their own organization that licenses the story out or licenses the rights to their community story and holds it in community. And so the appropriate way for me to exit the stage is not with another story, but with this sort of toolbox, this legal toolbox that other communities can use to own their own storytelling process. Because I would rather have that proliferation of voices than mine again.
Bravo.
Not to push back on that notion, I think you still need the creative voice and understanding editing and structuring, so you don't get too lost in having other voices speak, that you can't produce something that is coherent and has the power that you have in this film. That's just an editorial comment. My question really is, did you ever think about bringing the Americans to Malawi? Did that ever get seriously considered in the making of the film?
Well, you know, thanks, Wayne. I have to say, I mean, if you want coherence, I'll give you a book. Inflamed, Deep Medicine, The Anatomy of Injustice is out now, wherever good books are sold. But that, I feel like I'm contributing something, whereas the storytelling medium, I feel like, well, sorry, the documentary medium, I feel like I want to take a step back, but we can talk. But in the meantime, I'm lost. Sorry. Can you say that second question again? So Wayne.
The second question was not totally related to the comment, which is, did you consider bringing
the
Americans to Malawi?
Yes, I'm so sorry. Yes. Who is the guy who did Supersize Me? Morgan, thank you, Morgan Spurlock. So he did that, right? Where he ran this TV series where different Americans would swap lives for a couple of weeks. We ended up shooting the final bits of this just as the pandemic broke. So we were we're flying from Lilongwe to Addis Ababa, and then shared a buffet with a bunch of people who just got off an aircraft from China. And then my co-director and I spent 2 weeks very sick. And that's how the editing process, that's how we knew that we should probably lock it down and start editing. And so we didn't think that actually taking Americans to Malawi was what the story needed at that point. And after 10 years, we kind of were ready to wrap. But I mean, if Anita wants that, I would surely fundraise for it. But I would hope that Peter Mazunda, who you saw there, he started off as our fixer in Malawi, and then he ended up shooting, and then he ended up being a producer. And I think one day he is capable of being a director, and I would love for him to be that person who tells the second part of that story. So I'm not saying no, but I think it would be, Anita's in the driving seat for that story for sure.
Let's have one more question. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say that it's the Vermont Land Trust that
fantastic. Vermont Land Trust is doing that?
That is putting out land for people of color.
Okay, I'll check further into that. That's great. Thank you. There's a question in the back. Somebody has a microphone.
Thank you. This is an amazing evening. Thank you so much for sharing all this. My question was, when you brought two storylines together that were really brilliant, the one where you really introduced the gender and the role of women and men in this community, and then and the change, and then climate, right? And when did you decide that those, and you did this over such a long period of time, did you always, when did you decide that these two stories could come together?
This was Anita, honestly. We as part of the original vision of this project in 2010, we were going to look at lots of different places in the world that had not done small things like buying organic at Walmart, but done big things like patriarchy and taking on large corporations and changing the law and transforming the way folk eat, in a vast and systemic way. This particular story was about gender and climate change and agroecology, and all of a sudden it was all bundled up into one. And the fact that more and more ideas became important in Malawi was partly the Soils, Food and Healthy Communities Initiative, and partly what Anita was saying. And honestly, her line about when she learns about climate change, wait, do you need me to come to America to talk to these people? I mean, why are they not doing the right thing? That was indicative of her approach to change. As she said, you go to your neighbor's doorstep with your problem and they can't ignore you. And that, so in the end, it really was hers. But I think that there's another point here, which is in Detroit, they're also talking about the same thing. And in lots of places, they're talking about the same things. in sociology classes, we'll do patriarchy week, and we'll do, capitalism week, and we'll do this week and that week. But all of these problems are intersectional, and so frontline communities experience them simultaneously. So the question is, well, do we address the patriarchy or the climate change or the soil degradation? Well, no, you have to do them all at the same time, because they are woven together as part of the same problem, and the solution is going to unpick them all simultaneously. And that, I think, is quite interesting. That's again part of what we were trying to do in the story here, is not for this to be a gender film or a climate change film or a race film or a how do you make money farming film, but it was all of those. Because these are all live frontline questions that frontline communities are solving. And so, it was interesting. It's always interesting to see Black Lives Matter signs, and I think that's right. But the intelligence, it's not merely the lives that matter; it's the intelligence and the problem solving and the process of mutual solidarity and uplift. And that's what from Detroit to here to Malawi matters for these frontline communities. And I again want to thank you for sitting with this film and the discomfort that it causes us all, but also for recognizing that we can't just change one thing, we have to change it all. So thank you.
Great. Okay.